On today's episode of Cornell Keynotes, we are joined by Dr. Nick Fabrizio from Cornell's Jeb E. Brooks School of Public Policy to explore emotional intelligence. Now here, Nick guides us through what he calls the 5 essential components of emotional intelligence and shows us how to apply them in real-world situations so that you can benefit from this both personally and professionally. Right out of the gate, you're going to learn a few practical strategies that you can apply right away, like how to change up your approach to workplace challenges, and even more importantly, how to become more attuned and connected to others around you. So what we learned very quickly is how emotional intelligence underpins so much of how we engage in relationships. So whether you're managing a team or you're aiming to level up in your career, Nick stresses how absolutely critical emotional intelligence is in becoming more influential as a manager and a leader. A lot of what we cover here maps to what Nick teaches in the Leveraging Emotions for Success online course, which is brought to you by eCornell as part of the 4-course Frontline Skills Cornell Certificate Program. If you're curious about this and want to learn more, please just check out the episode notes for details. So now here's my discussion on emotional intelligence with Dr. Nick Fabrizio from the Cornell Brooks School of Public Policy. So Nick, as we're kicking off this discussion about emotional intelligence, from where you sit, tell us what it is and why you think it's so important.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think it's not only important in the workplace, but as my daughter reminds me, it's so important just in everyday conversations, even conversations you have with your family. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand, manage, and use your emotions, both your emotions and responding to other people's emotions effectively. So why is it important? It's important because it improves communication. It serves as the foundation to strengthen workplace and personal relationships. It enhances your decision-making and helps you manage stress and conflict. And these are key skills for both your personal and your professional success.
You know, I want to mention to our audience too, I would love to say that we're going to be able to teach you everything you need to know about emotional intelligence today, but Professor Fabrizio is providing a framework for understanding, kind of setting you forth on a course to learning, because from what I'm learning from Nick here, emotional intelligence is about practicing, by doing, right? It's a constant aspiration. It's something you have to work at your entire career. So Nick, how do we understand if we are emotionally intelligent ourselves? How do we do that assessment?
So it really involves both self-reflection, the ability for you to stand back from a situation, hopefully before you react, and also at the same time getting external feedback. So it's not just about how you feel. It's about how well you understand and manage and use your emotions to navigate social situations. So it's really about feedback from others, getting self-assessments, and learning how these emotional situations can help you assess your emotional intelligence. And as we continue to talk, Chris, the tools for you to improve your emotional intelligence.
Now, is this something that we're born with, emotional intelligence to some degree, or is it something that you can learn entirely by teaching yourself?
So it's really both. It's both innate, kind of what you're born with, but also more importantly, what you can learn. So some people, as you know, and as you talk to others, they're just more empathetic and self-aware, but the core skills like managing your emotions, being empathetic and empathizing with others, and communicating effectively can all be developed through practice, getting feedback, and experience over time. The more you do it, the better you get. It grows with conscious practice and intention. And it's really, I kind of tell people, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes.
And that, that's going to be a through line that emerges throughout this conversation. I should mention that you are the faculty author for Leveraging Emotions for Success. This is an online course, which is part of a larger certificate program, but more to come on that. So again, to kind of reiterate, what we're providing today is a framework for emotional intelligence. We've promised to do this through 5 key components or 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. So again, you won't learn it all today, but I promise this will serve you. If we go through these 5 pillars, you choose to learn more about them, we'll set you on a path to learn about this stuff. So dealing with conflict is our number one key component here This is everyone's favorite workplace conflict. So when we deal with difficult situations, Nick, how do you recommend that we stay emotionally balanced when we're actually in this situational conflict itself? Like in this case, how specifically can emotional intelligence prevent situations from escalating right away?
Yeah, this is a common issue that you have in the workplace, but I would also say it happens in your home life too. And maybe you're more reactive in your home life because you're more familiar with the people that you come in contact with on a daily basis. So it's not easier at home. I always tell people it's harder at home, but now related to work and work life, the most important thing and the hardest thing to do, and people will relate to this, is pause before you react. And why does it work? It works because it helps you respond to the situation appropriately instead of just being in this fight, what other people's may interpret as this fight response. So how do you do it? It's really about learning the power of breathing. So it's about taking a deep breath before you respond. This might mean that you have to excuse yourself from that discussion. And you may just say, whether it's your coworker or your boss or a family member, can you just excuse me for a minute? I need to just take a walk or I need to think about something, because that really helps you process your emotions. It's like I tell a lot of people now in the workplace, as we're so reliant on emails and texting, the first thing you do when you get a text, and I'm guilty of this as well, is you fire off a response. And you don't really think about what you're saying in an email and in text because we're conditioned for this immediate response. And that is counter to emotional intelligence. It's where you want that pause before you're reacting. So I always tell people, don't reply to that email right away that you get from a coworker or a superior or a boss in that setting. Take a minute and reflect on that situation because it's probably not a time sensitive response that's needed. Two is practice active listening. So this is about letting the other person finish speaking before you provide your thoughts. And then maybe you want to paraphrase and say, oh, Chris, what I heard you say is this. And then Chris will tell me if what I said was what he truly meant. So that's that practice active listening. And really important is to maintain a non-confrontational tone. I think many people on our session today can think of specific times when they talk to someone and immediately they get this negative reaction and it's confrontational. And that really isn't productive. So your tone and your body language often communicate more than your words do. So speak calmly, make neutral eye contact, and use I statements. I think, I believe, I feel are very important when you're communicating with people. And then seek common ground. So focus on the shared goals. Obviously, if you're in the workplace, you have shared goals with your coworkers or your boss. You have shared goals. In the family, in your families, you have shared goals as well. So really think about how those shared goals are important, why they're important, and how common ground plays into this.
Good conflict tips. So let me ask you, in your coursework or when you're teaching at the university itself, do you provide like a framework or are there any step-by-step approaches to like preventing the escalation that you've just described, building on what you just told us?
Yeah, thanks. So these are really the 5 key areas, and this is what the course builds on, but you can teach yourself these as well. And the first one, and most important, is self-awareness. It allows you to recognize your emotional triggers before they kind of hijack your behavior. So if you're not good at something or you immediately react to an email or to a situation, you've got to be self-aware and say, oh, and this is one of my weaknesses. I'm not going to respond to that email in 3 seconds. I'm going to really, reflect on that and think about what I want to say. So self-awareness, number one, most important. Two is self-regulation. It helps you stay calm and be constructive rather than being reactive and defensive. Three, a hard one, is empathy. Empathy is very difficult. And very often you'll hear people say, well, you're not empathetic. Empathy is a hard skill to develop. It really enables you to understand other people's perspectives and it reduces misunderstandings. When people feel like you understand them, they feel like they're heard, it's much more productive than just kind of blowing it off. And four, social skills. You've got to be diplomatic, right? You've got to be able to be neutral in your conversation so you can reflect and think about what the other person is saying. It's about being effective and effectively communicate when there's tension. And then five, finally, is motivation. Keep focused on long-term goals. What's our project? We need team success here. We've got to deliver this project on time. We're all involved. It's really important for me to do my job, my coworkers to do their job so we're successful. So rather than focus on kind of short-term emotional satisfaction, try to focus on the big picture. What are we here to do? So it's about applying these skills. Really, emotional intelligence prevents escalation by replacing the reactivity with thoughtful, constructive dialogue. It reduces defensiveness and eases tensions and really fosters effective collaboration.
That's a lot in there. Thank you, Nick. Here's an interesting one. I love the turn that this takes here, where we talk about the second key component, which is working better with people with different personalities than your own or from each other. So when we are working with people with different personalities, how might some of the emotional intelligence attributes that you've just described help us better understand people and ultimately for ourselves to adapt to different personality types in the workplace?
So really, this is about those 5 key areas, that self-awareness. How do your own traits affect the interactions? What are the things that you do that impact how other people respond to those situations? 2 is empathy. Can you sense other people's emotions when they're communicating with you? And what are their communication styles? So if your boss runs over to you with a project that has to be done right away, what do you think about that situation? Can you tell that they're kind of emotional about it, that they probably have pressure from someone else? And so trying to be empathetic in that situation goes a long way. And 3 is self-regulation. You have to adjust your reactions to fit different personalities. So you kind of want to be calm and have that calming influence because it's more productive in the workplace rather than it's that fight or flight. You don't want to be perceived that you're always fighting on every situation or every project, and you're the one that nobody wants to go to because they're going to get that reaction from you that really isn't helpful. And those social skills, I'd say 4 of those social skills are really important. So build on ways that you can better communicate with people. And that's kind of what we talked about earlier, matching your style and being adaptable, matching your style so you can be calm and effective and respond to the situation more productively. So that's really not only important for frontline workers, but it's also important for managers. Managers need to know what motivates their employees and how their employees react to situations so they can better help communicate with them. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to complete that project. You're trying to give someone that deliverable that you're there to do. So understanding how your emotions play into it go a long way.
Yeah, I bet, personality styles is probably honestly one of the great dividers in our workplaces, in addition to its adjunct, which you described as communication styles, right? So if we all have different communication styles, presumably to some degree we do, is there anything we can do to build rapport or like to bridge communication gaps with colleagues whose communication styles or their entire personalities are like significantly different than our own?
Right. So what I tell people is a few things. 1, kind of observe and adapt. You got to match their pace, tone, and preferred modes. So how do they like to communicate? Let's think about coworkers. You'll have some coworkers that like the face-to-face communication. When something's bothering them or they had a question on a project, they'll come talk to you. Face-to-face is fine. You may have a boss. Maybe this boss is even in a different location where face-to-face is not going to be practical. So you're going to have to learn to figure out their style may be email, it may be a video call. So if you're not particularly good at a video call, try to reach out and develop that as a tool, because if that's their preferred model and you don't know how to do it, or you don't know how to Zoom, or you need help with that, get that help because you want to match their preferred style. You want to observe and adapt. And ask, don't assume. So it's okay to clarify how people like to communicate. I used to tell my boss way back when, what's the best way to get a hold of you? How do you want me to give you this report? Do you want it in an email? Do you want me to print it? Do you want me to bring it up to your office? Do you want me to leave it on your desk? Tell me what you prefer, and I'm going to match my style to that. And then listen actively. Show genuine interest and reflect back on what you hear. And you say, okay, Chris, I understand that the deadline's next week. You want me to print this report? You want me to finish this project? Get it on your desk by Friday, end of the day? And Chris will tell me if my understanding of the project is correct. If he says, well, I said a week, but I really need it on Thursday, I need to know that because I'm figuring Friday. So I want to communicate that back to him so he understands what I heard to make sure we're on the same page and find common ground. Really important in the workplace. What are we here to do? At the end of the day, we're here to complete a project, deliver a task, do something that's in our kind of purview and our responsibility that achieves a common goal. So what is it that we're here to do? And let's just talk about that. And then finally, be respectful and patient. Give people space to communicate, give them time to react, and give them time to come up with solutions that may be in both your best interests. So it's really adaptability is the key. You have to flex your style to build trust and mutual respect.
So building on that adaptability, you and I talked before the show about, well, you had just kind of described several communication modes, right? Like, how are we going to communicate? How do you want this report? How do you want this feedback? That kind of stuff. But in addition to the modes, getting back to the styles, I had asked you about formality and communications versus informality, which is sometimes where you end up landing with someone. Can you talk a little bit about what we talked about earlier?
Yeah, so it's really about understanding how, like when you just said, the formality versus the informality. So how do you like to communicate? So I've known Chris over the years, so we kind of got our style of communicating. And when it first started, Chris would say, Professor Fabrizio, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And then I would respond to Chris and just say, Chris, call me Nick. And then we'd clarify some things. And then over time, it became a much more kind of just an easy, free flow conversation, but we developed that over time. So our latest communication years later wouldn't have been appropriate on week one when we just, introduced each other and we just launched one of many projects that we've worked on. So over time and getting used to each other, we've kind of adapted and learned how we work. So now we just communicate very effectively. And what used to take us, and people in the audience will relate to this, what maybe used to take you a 5-minute discussion or a 10-minute overview or a lengthy email, now we can do it in a matter of 30 seconds and we can communicate really the same information that we did early on that took us a half hour. So it's really about learning and adapting and being comfortable with not only your coworkers, but your boss. So that works vice versa as well. It's like the boss understanding how to communicate with their employees as well. And over time, they build that relationship so that communication becomes more seamless. And that's really about emotional intelligence.
So Nick, you also suggested that emotional intelligence can help us reduce or manage workplace stress. Again, any techniques, any frameworks for how to deal with that? That would seem like the golden egg here.
Yeah, no, that's really important. So there are a few things that you want to think about. So the first one, and we've talked about it, so I'm glad we're talking about it again, it's pausing and breathing. Just by breathing, the psychology of it is you use deep breathing to reset your nervous system. So it often gives you time to reframe issues, to take a break and remove yourself from that situation where you're going to fight and want to immediately respond, probably in a not so effective way. So first, pause and breathe. And then two, reframe the situation. So shift it from a threat to a challenge. I think if I just heard this information and now you've given me the third project, I'm just going to think through that. Okay, I've got a third project now. Why are they coming to me with this? How does it relate to the big picture? What's my role in it? And what can I do to help? So that's really about reframing the situation to try to understand why someone is coming to you with maybe yet another task or to do something differently. And then practice empathy. We've talked about empathy. Consider the other people's stress and pressure. So I had trouble getting through this when I first started my career as well, right? So the boss is coming with yet another project. Well, when I reflected on that, I said, well, he's coming to me with yet another project because up the ladder, he just got assigned another project. And that's why it's now my project. So I'm just trying to understand the organizational dynamics and that most likely he or she, my boss, didn't just come up with a new task just to give me a new task. It relates to something. So I'm trying to understand where that came from. So use that positive self-talk as well. That's about replacing my negative thoughts with something more constructive. And then finally, take micro breaks. I really encourage people, just take a little break, walk away to briefly reset your emotions. It's really important to do that because you won't think clearly if you're always trying to react to a situation. So taking micro breaks is important. And these emotional intelligence tools, at the end of the day, help you stay focused, calm, and in control under pressure.
And in many ways, it feels like the conversation's been leading us up to this, which is talking about or cultivating and building stronger relationships with our coworkers. And again, this can be emotional intelligence practices. And in your words, which I think is really interesting, that help us build authentic connections with coworkers, especially, again, in a hybrid or distributed work environment. How do we build better connections with people using some of the emotional intelligence techniques that you teach?
Yeah, great question, Chris. And this is really now a dynamic from sort of post-COVID when we have these hybrid work arrangements, and maybe there is, or maybe there is not an office anymore. And so it's really based on a few important factors. One is empathetic listening. Give your full attention to people during both in-person conversations, which is easier, and in the Zoom or the virtual environment as well. And you can always tell this in a meeting. The people who have their cameras off are just, you're not sure if they're in the room or they're out of the room. There's really no way to tell. So be physically present. I always tell people, I don't care what you're doing. I just want to see your cameras on. I don't care if there's cats or there are dogs or your room's a mess or you're outside on the deck. I don't care about any of that. I just want to see your face so I know that you're physically present and that you can react to things. So there's nothing like having 20 people in a virtual meeting and having 18 blank screens with just their names. So you really don't know if 18 people are there or two. So give your full attention during virtual and in-person conversations. Two, emotional transparency. Share your feelings. We talked about this because it helps foster trust. If I tell Chris, I'm really feeling stressed about this, or I've had a bad day, I've had a bad week, I'm going to do this project, but I really got to reset. And it's, the next couple of days are going to be hard for me. That really helps reframe and reset the project because Chris knows now I'm under a lot of stress. Maybe I got another project I have to finish. So try to be aware of that, both if you're a frontline worker or if you're a manager. Managers have to be aware of what their employees are going through. And maybe in a sort of a decentralized or a matrix organization where a worker has more than one boss, they may have another project from another boss that they have to complete. And you don't know that. You just think your project is the most important thing. So you've got to kind of understand the organizational dynamics, where the pressures are coming from, and how many projects are needed to be completed by your workers. And it's really important to know that. And part of that goes hand in hand with having check-ins. So reach out and have check-ins. Really important for managers to have check-ins with their employees, just to ask them, how you doing? I gave you a project last week. I know you had other projects that were due as well. How you doing with them? Is there anything I can do to help? That's really important in the workplace, as well as being adaptable. So respect different work styles and how people like to communicate, and just try to understand that. I know we talked about that earlier, but it's really important. And then finally, appreciation and recognition. Acknowledge other people's efforts, both publicly and privately. And when you're having your staff meetings, when your coworkers are around, call out people and praise them for doing a good job, or the group as a whole. And you can say, if it was me, listen, I know I gave the team an extra difficult project. It was unexpected. I know you're busy doing other things. Something just came up, obviously from up on high. We had to get it done. You all did a great job in doing that. So I just want to personally let you know that I see that I appreciate it, and I respect you for the job that you've done. So be able to do that publicly and privately.
Great advice. Powerful little segment there. So let me ask you, you had talked a little bit before our discussion about transforming casual relationships or, workplace relationships into something a little more meaningful by way of professional or meaningful professional connections. What did you mean by that? Taking it to the next level in a relationship like that?
Yeah, so it's using emotional intelligence to deepen workplace relationships. So how do you do that? And it's about being authentic, right? So show general interest, ask thoughtful questions, and listen actively. I'm excited about this project that we have right now. It's new. I know it's going to be challenging. I know it's on top of the other projects that we have, but I'm really interested in how you all can contribute to this. So show genuine interest and be emotionally present. Don't just put things on autopilot. Like I'm sure everyone has had bosses in the past or coworkers who, if you ask them a question, you can get the same kind of monotone response throughout the whole day. And so they kind of respond to that. And it's really hard to get excited about that, right? As a worker, it's hard for me to get excited when I don't see that same excitement by my boss or my superior. I want to know that the project is important. So if you can tell me and show me why it's important and be emotionally present, that'll go much further than this. We've got another project. We've got to get it done. I expect you to all finish this by next Friday. So that's about being emotionally present and sharing authentically. Open up and tell the truth. So if you're a manager or coworker, I know what we said earlier, if you've just got this project, even if it wasn't your idea, maybe you didn't even know about it. You found out about it last week, but someone says it has to get done. Tell people that. We've got an unexpected project. It's really important to leadership that we do it. I need your help. So do that. Show authenticity and follow through. If you say you're going to do something, do it, right? So people probably will be able to relate to this mostly from their home life, right? So you always say that if you say you're going to do something, do it, right? So if I said take out the trash, take out the trash, right? If I say I'm going to do something, fill up the car with gas, fill the car up with gas. Follow through on your commitments. And then finally, offer support. So some people in the workplace will need help. Maybe you identified your coworker that needs help. See if you can help them and maybe tag team them with someone else, just so they can start to get some momentum, because these emotionally intelligent driven actions, they sort of turn surface level interactions into really lasting professional connections.
Nick, you had said that emotional intelligence can go so far as to enable us to enjoy our jobs more, to be more fulfilled at work. How does that work?
Yeah. So how does it lead to sort of workplace happiness? We're all hearing about this workplace happiness now. So I tell people emotional intelligence leads to greater job satisfaction by improving how we handle stress. More importantly, how do we relate to others? How do others relate to us? And how do we find meaning in our work? So it creates a more positive, resilient, and collaborative work experience. So the most impact workplace happiness, the specific skills that you need really are three, and they're really the most important. One, we've talked about it before, self-awareness. It helps you align with the work values, your strengths, trying to help you to get the job done, and it leads to more fulfillment, right? So self-awareness, self-regulation, because it reduces burnout. You've got to be able to manage your stress and your emotional triggers more effectively. And then third, empathy. It fosters stronger relationships and you have a supportive team culture.
So let's take it home, right? So those in our audience, how can they identify for themselves, which of the 5 components they need to work on the most for themselves? And what might be some signs that we can kind of pick up on that tell us that that particular area needs attention? In short, how do we assess our own emotional intelligence and then do something about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a great way to kind of think about, reflect on sort of where we are and where we need to be. And that's really assessing your emotional intelligence. So the ways that you can do that are, one, self-reflection. Keep a journal of your interactions and your responses to different situations. So just write the way someone asked me to do X, or XYZ came up into a meeting, someone asked me a question, and this is how I responded. So you can do that in a journal, or you can do it on your phone using your note screen or on your laptop. However you want to do it, it's called journaling. So journal that, because when you go back and reflect, which we talked about earlier, you can see how you handled that situation, and with the benefit of time, how you might have handled that differently. Or moving forward, how would you handle that the next time it happens? The only way to do that is you've got to kind of memorialize that, right? You've got to journal it. And you may have 20, 50, eventually 100 different things in your journal that you can just easily thumb through and say, oh, okay, last year, this is what happened. This is how I reacted. It came up again a year later. This is how I improved, and this is what I did. So that's most important. That self-reflection and that journaling is how you do it. 2, get feedback. So ask your coworkers, this is how I responded. What do you think? What could I have done differently? Mentors and friends are another great avenue for you to get feedback on what happened. And hopefully you have friends that are honest and will provide you sort of tough criticism, and that's okay. And they may have said, hey, Nick, this is maybe what you would have done differently. I probably wouldn't have reacted if the situation wasn't emergent, and it doesn't sound like by what you told me you needed to give them an answer right away. You probably could have slept on that and come back a day later and gone back up to your boss and said, hey, you know what? This is what I would have done differently. Or to your coworker. I got into disagreement or a fight with my coworker because I responded to something. But you know what? If I had a day in between, I would have said, you know what? This is what I would have done differently. So be able to get feedback. And then does your organization do evaluations? What do the evaluations say? Do they talk about your performance and maybe how you react to situations, or do they talk at all about your behavior? So see if your evaluations say something that can help you go find additional help. There are emotional intelligence assessments. There's something called the EQI 2.0. There's EI appraisals. They can be purchased and you can find people that could administer those tests on you. And then finally, there's coaching or therapy. Some people have coaches. Some people go to therapy because sometimes a neutral third party can help you get through things that you just can't do on your own. And in the family life and the family cycle, that is apparent as well. So identifying your weaker areas is really the first step towards targeted growth and stronger emotional resilience at work. So these tools and approaches really provide insight into your EI strengths, emotional intelligence strengths, and they help you find those blind spots so you can build a plan for growth.
I want to thank you for listening to Cornell Keynotes. If you learned something here and you are eager to learn more, be sure to check out the episode notes for information on eCornell's 4-course Frontline Skills Cornell Certificate Program. I want to thank you for listening, friends, and as always, please subscribe to stay in touch.